Commander Jake Morrison stood at the viewport of the transport ship, watching the red planet grow larger as they approached. Valeria Prime looked nothing like Earth with its crimson sky and silver clouds that moved in strange patterns. Jake had been to many worlds during his 10 years of service, but this mission felt different, more important, more dangerous. "Sir, we'll be landing in 20 minutes, said Lisa Shang, his communications officer. She was young but skilled, and Jake trusted her completely. "The Zephyrians are expecting us at the main spaceport." Jake nodded and adjusted his dress uniform. Everything had to be perfect today. Earth needed this alliance more than the Zephyrians knew. The rare minerals on Valeria Prime could power human ships for decades, but getting them would require careful diplomacy. One wrong move could start a war between two species. "Remember, everyone," Jake said to his small team. "We're guests here. Their customs come first, even if they seem strange to us. Dr. Santos, you're our guide on cultural matters. Don't let me embarrass our entire species." Dr. Peter Santos smiled nervously. He was a thin man with gray hair who had spent years studying alien cultures. "The Zephyrians value honor above all else, Commander. They respect strength but hate aggression. It's a fine line to walk." The ship landed with a gentle thud. Through the viewport, Jake could see the capital city of Astral Heights stretching out before them. Tall crystal towers reached toward the sky, glowing with soft light. The architecture was beautiful but alien, with curved lines and impossible angles that hurt to look at for too long. Jake's team walked down the landing ramp into the warm air of Valeria Prime. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth's, making each step feel like a small bounce. A group of Zephyrians waited for them at the edge of the landing pad. The Zephyrians were tall, almost 7 feet on average, with pale skin marked by silver lines that traced intricate patterns across their faces and arms. Their eyes were larger than human eyes, with colors that seemed to shift in the light. They wore flowing robes in deep blues and purples, and each carried a curved sword at their side. "Welcome to Valeria Prime," said the leader of the group. His silver markings glowed faintly as he spoke, which Dr. Santos had explained meant strong emotions. "I am Captain Rex Thunderbolt of the Palace Guard. High Commander Vex Stormwind sends his greetings." Jake stepped forward and bowed slightly, the way Dr. Santos had taught him. "Thank you for welcoming us. I'm Commander Jake Morrison, representing Earth's Diplomatic Corps. You will be taken to the guest quarters first," Captain Rex said. "Tonight you will dine with the High Commander and his family. Tomorrow, formal negotiations begin." The ride through Astral Heights was amazing. Jake had never seen a city like this. The buildings seemed to grow from the ground like plants, their crystal walls reflecting the red sunlight in rainbow patterns. Zephyrians walked the streets in small groups, their silver markings creating a constant light show as they talked and laughed. "They're beautiful," Lisa whispered, watching a group of Zephyrian children play in a fountain that shot up columns of colored water. "And dangerous," Dr. Santos added quietly. "Each one of those civilians could probably fight off 3 human soldiers. They're bred for war." The guest quarters were in a building that looked like a massive flower made of blue crystal. Their rooms were simple but elegant, with furniture that seemed to be carved from single pieces of stone. Jake barely had time to change clothes before a servant arrived to escort them to dinner. The dining hall was enormous, with a ceiling that showed the stars above through transparent crystal. Long tables filled the room, and hundreds of Zephyrians sat eating and talking. The noise was overwhelming at first, but Jake noticed that everyone stopped talking when his team entered. "Commander Morrison," called a voice from the head table. "Please join us." High Commander Vex Stormwind was an impressive figure even among the tall Zephyrians. His silver markings were more elaborate than anyone else's, covering his entire face in swirling patterns. His hair was white, but his eyes were young and sharp. He wore a simple robe, but the sword at his side was clearly ancient and valuable. "This is my daughter, Lady Arya Stormwind," he said, gesturing to the woman beside him. "She will be your cultural liaison during your stay." Jake felt his breath catch. Lady Arya was stunning even by human standards. Her silver markings formed, delicate patterns around her eyes and down her neck. Her hair was long and dark, and her eyes were the color of deep ocean water. She wore a simple white dress, but she moved with the grace of a trained warrior. "Commander Morrison," she said, and her voice was like music. "I hope your journey was comfortable." "Very much so, Lady Aria," Jake replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "Your world is more beautiful than any description could capture." She smiled, and Jake noticed that her markings glowed slightly brighter. "You are kind to say so. I look forward to showing you more of our culture." The dinner began with elaborate ceremonies that Dr. Santos had prepared Jake for. Each course was announced with formal words, and guests were expected to respond in specific ways. Jake managed to avoid any major mistakes, though he noticed some of the younger Zephyrians watching him with amused expressions. Everything changed when Captain Zane Shadowblade stood up. Zane was different from the other Zephyrians. His markings were dark silver, almost black, and his eyes held no warmth. He wore the uniform of a different clan, with a badge that Dr. Santos had warned Jake about. The Shadowblades were known for their dislike of outsiders. "High Commander," Zane said, his voice carrying across the hall, "I must speak about these humans who sit at our table." The hall fell silent. High Commander Vex looked annoyed but nodded. "Speak, Captain Shadowblade. What do we really know about humans?" Zane continued. "They come from a world where they fight constant wars. They poison their own air and water. They care nothing for honor or tradition. Why should we trust them with our sacred minerals?" Jake felt his anger rising, but forced himself to stay calm. This was exactly what Dr. Santos had warned him about. Any show of aggression would prove Zane's point. "Humans are warriors, yes," Jake said, standing slowly. "But we fight to protect what we love. We've made mistakes, but we've also learned from them. We come to you not as conquerors, but as friends who hope to learn from your wisdom." Zane laughed, but it was not a pleasant sound. "Pretty words, human. But words are easy. Actions show truth. What actions prove your honor?" Before Jake could respond, Lady Aria spoke. "Captain Shadowblade, these humans are our guests. They deserve our respect until they prove otherwise." "Respect must be earned, my lady," Zane replied. "Not given to strangers who—" The rest of his words were cut off by the sound of breaking glass. Dark figures in black clothing dropped through the crystal ceiling, landing among the dinner guests. They wore masks that covered their faces, but Jake could see the weapons in their hands. "Assassins!" Someone shouted. Chaos erupted in the dining hall. Zephyrians jumped up from their tables, drawing their swords in smooth, practiced motions. The assassins moved like shadows, striking at anyone who got in their way. Jake saw High Commander Vex fighting 3 attackers at once, his sword moving so fast it was just a blur of silver light. "Lisa, get behind the pillar!" Jake shouted to his communications officer. "Peter, stay down." Jake looked around for a weapon, but saw only dinner knives and serving spoons. Then he spotted Lady Aria across the hall. She was trapped behind an overturned table while 3 assassins approached her. Her father was too far away to help, and the palace guards were fighting their own battles. Without thinking, Jake ran toward her. An assassin swung a curved blade at his head, but Jake ducked and kept running. He needed a weapon, any weapon. On the wall near Lady Aria hung an ornate sword in a crystal case. Jake smashed the case with his elbow and grabbed the sword's handle. The moment his fingers touched the metal, the sword began to glow with bright silver light. The blade felt perfect in his hands, balanced and alive. Jake had trained with swords during his military service, but this felt different, natural, like the weapon had been made for him. The first assassin reached Lady Aria just as Jake arrived. Jake's sword cut through the assassin's blade like it was made of paper. The man screamed and stumbled backward. The second assassin attacked from the side, but Jake spun and caught the blade on his own sword, then drove his elbow into the man's throat. The third assassin was faster and more skilled. He fought Jake with quick, precise strikes that tested every bit of training Jake had ever received. But somehow, Jake felt like he knew exactly what to do. The glowing sword moved in his hands like it was alive, parrying and attacking with perfect timing. Finally, Jake saw his opening. He stepped inside the assassin's guard and drove his sword hilt into the man's temple. The assassin crumpled to the floor, unconscious. The battle was over as quickly as it had begun. The surviving assassins fled through the broken ceiling, leaving behind their dead and wounded. Palace guards rushed to secure the area while servants helped injured guests. Jake stood panting, still holding the glowing sword. Only then did he notice that everyone in the hall was staring at him. Lady Arya looked at him with an expression he couldn't read. High Commander Vex approached slowly, his eyes fixed on the weapon in Jake's hands. The morning sun cast long shadows across the guest quarters where Jake sat staring at his hands. He had barely slept after the events of the previous night. Every time he closed his eyes, he could see the sword glowing in his grip and feel the strange connection he had felt with the weapon. Dr. Santos had spent hours explaining Zephyrian history, but Jake still didn't understand what had happened. "Commander, you need to eat something," Lisa said, setting down a tray of food that the servants had brought. The Zephyrian breakfast looked strange but smelled good. "The High Commander wants to meet with you in an hour." Jake picked at the food without really tasting it. "Peter, explain it to me again. What does it mean that the sword glowed?" Dr. Santos looked tired and worried. He had been reading his research notes all night, trying to understand the situation. "The Moonwhisper sword is not just a weapon, Commander. It's a sacred artifact that contains part of the Stormwind clan's spiritual essence. For 3,000 years, only blood members of the clan have been able to activate it. The fact that it responded to you is unprecedented." "But I'm human," Jake said. "I don't have any connection to their clan." "That's what makes this so complicated," Dr. Santos replied. "According to Zephyrian law, anyone who can wield a clan's ancestral weapon is considered worthy of joining that clan. But there are rules about how that happens." Before Jake could ask more questions, Captain Rex Thunderbolt arrived to escort them to the High Commander's private office. The palace corridors were quieter than usual, and Jake noticed that many of the guards looked at him with curiosity and respect. Word of the previous night's events had spread quickly. High Commander Vex Stormwind's office was a circular room at the top of one of the crystal towers. The walls were transparent, giving a perfect view of the city below. Lady Arya stood beside her father's desk, and Jake felt his heart skip when she looked at him. "Commander Morrison," the High Commander said, gesturing to a chair. "Please sit. We have much to discuss." Jake sat down, feeling nervous despite his military training. "Sir, I want to apologize if I broke any laws by touching the sword. I was only trying to protect Lady Arya." High Commander Vex smiled, but it was not entirely happy. "You did nothing wrong, Commander. In fact, you did something that should have been impossible. The Moonwhisper sword has never responded to an outsider before. This creates a unique situation." "What kind of situation?" Jake asked. Lady Arya spoke for the first time. "Commander Morrison, in our culture there are ancient laws about the clan swords. These laws have guided our people for thousands of years." "Tell me about these laws," Jake said. Dr. Santos shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He had been researching all night and had found something that worried him. "Commander, I think you should know that wielding a clan sword creates certain obligations." High Commander Vex nodded gravely. "When someone who is not a clan member successfully wields an ancestral weapon in defense of a clan heir, they become bound to that clan. The bond is considered sacred and cannot be broken." Jake felt confused. "Bound how? Like an honorary member?" "More than that," Lady Arya said quietly. "If the clan heir is unmarried, the bond becomes a marriage contract. The warrior who wielded the sword becomes betrothed to the heir." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. He stared at Lady Arya, then at her father, then back at Lady Arya. "Are you saying that by using the sword to protect you, I'm now supposed to marry you?" "According to our laws, yes," High Commander Vex said. "The bond was formed the moment Moonwhisper accepted you as its wielder. This has never happened with someone from another species before, but the law makes no distinction about race." Jake stood up quickly, his chair scraping against the floor. But I didn't know about any marriage law. I was just trying to help. Surely there's some way to undo this? Lady Arya's silver markings dimmed slightly, and Jake realized his reaction had hurt her feelings. Commander, I understand this is unexpected, but our laws exist for good reasons. They ensure that only worthy warriors can join our clans. I'm not saying you're not worthy, Jake said quickly. You're incredible. Any man would be honored to marry you. But I'm human. I don't belong in your world. The sword disagrees, High Commander Vex said simply. Moonwhisper has never been wrong about a person's worthiness. If it accepted you, there must be a reason, Dr. Santos cleared his throat. Commander, there may be another complication. I've been reading about Zephyrian marriage laws, and apparently the betrothal must be publicly announced within 7 days or it becomes void. That's not the only problem, Lady Arya said. There are members of other clans who will challenge this binding. They believe humans are unworthy of joining Zephyrian society. As if summoned by her words, the office door opened and Captain Zane Shadowblade entered without permission. His dark silver markings were glowing with anger, and his hand rested on his sword hilt. High Commander, Zane said, his voice cold. I come to contest this mockery of our sacred laws. High Commander Vex's own markings began to glow. Captain Shadowblade, you enter my office without invitation and speak disrespectfully of our customs. Explain yourself. A human cannot join a Zephyrian clan, Zane said. This creature may have touched the sword, but he is not one of us. He has no honor, no understanding of our ways. The law was never meant to apply to aliens. Jake felt his anger rising but forced himself to stay calm. Captain, I didn't ask for this situation. But I won't stand here and let you insult my entire species. You see, Zane said, pointing at Jake. Already he shows aggression. Humans are warriors without honor. They would pollute our bloodlines and corrupt our traditions. Lady Arya stepped forward, her markings blazing with silver light. Captain Shadowblade, you forget yourself. Commander Morrison risked his life to protect me when assassins attacked. He showed more honor in one moment than you have shown in this entire conversation. Pretty words, Lady Arya, Zane replied, but words are not enough. If this human truly believes he is worthy of joining your clan, let him prove it in combat. I challenge him to a trial by blade. High Commander Vex stood up slowly. Captain Shadowblade, you invoke an ancient right, but are you certain? A trial by blade is binding. The winner's position cannot be questioned. I am certain, Zane said. Let the human face a true Zephyrian warrior. When he falls, this foolish betrothal will be ended. Jake looked at Lady Arya, who was watching him with worried eyes. He didn't understand all the customs and laws, but he understood that this challenge would determine more than just his own fate. If he refused, it would prove that humans were cowards. If he accepted and lost, it would shame Lady Arya and her father. I accept your challenge, Jake said. Zane smiled, but it was not pleasant. Excellent. The trial will be held in 3 days, giving you time to prepare. We will fight with clan swords in the Grand Colosseum before all the people of Astral Heights. After Zane left, the office fell silent. Finally, Lady Arya spoke. Commander Morrison, you don't understand what you've agreed to. Captain Shadowblade is one of our finest warriors. He has never lost a formal duel. Then I'll have to be the first to beat him, Jake said. High Commander Vex studied Jake carefully. You show courage, Commander. But courage alone will not be enough. If you are truly committed to this path, you must learn our ways of combat. Lady Arya will teach you. Father, 3 days is not enough time to, Lady Arya began. It will have to be, her father interrupted. The challenge has been made and accepted. Now we must prepare as best we can. Jake spent the rest of the day learning about Zephyrian sword fighting from Lady Arya. She was a skilled teacher and an even better warrior. Her movements were fluid and graceful, but Jake could see the deadly precision behind every strike. Your species fights differently than ours, she explained as they practiced in a private training room. Humans are more aggressive, more willing to take risks. Zephyrians fight with patience and precision. You must learn to combine both styles. As they worked together, Jake found himself watching Lady Arya more than he should have. She was beautiful, but more than that, she was intelligent and strong. He could see why the sword had accepted him as her protector. She deserved someone who would fight for her. Lady Arya, he said during a break in their training, I need to ask you something directly. Do you want this betrothal? Or are you just accepting it because of duty? She was quiet for a long moment. Commander Morrison, I have been trained since childhood to put my clan's needs before my own desires. But I will tell you this, when I saw you grab Moonwhisper to protect me, I felt something I had never felt before, respect, admiration, perhaps. More. And now I hope you survive the trial, she said softly, because I think I would like to know you better. That evening, Jake sat in his room thinking about everything that had happened. 2 days ago, he had been a simple military officer on a diplomatic mission. Now he was betrothed to an alien princess and facing a duel that could determine the future of human-Zephyrian relations. Lisa knocked on his door. Commander, there's something you should know. We've been monitoring communications and word of your betrothal is spreading to other worlds. Earth Command is very interested in this development. What do you mean? They think your marriage to Lady Arya could be the key to a permanent alliance between our species. The Council of Clans met in the ancient Hall of Voices, a massive chamber carved from a single piece of crystal deep beneath astral heights. Representatives from all 12 major clans sat in a circle, their silver markings creating patterns of light in the dim room. Jake had never seen so many Zephyrians in one place, and the weight of their stares made him uncomfortable. High Commander Vex Stormwind stood at the center of the circle, holding the Moonwhisper sword. The blade glowed softly as he spoke, responding to his clan bloodline. Honored council members, we gather to discuss an unprecedented situation. A human has been accepted by our most sacred weapon. Lady Arya sat with the other clan heirs, her face calm but her markings betraying her nervousness. Jake stood beside Dr. Santos near the chamber entrance, trying to understand the rapid Zephyrian being spoken around him. The human should not be here, said Commander Vera Ironforge of the Ironforge clan. She was an older woman with scars on her face and arms. This is clan business. Outsiders have no place in our sacred halls. With respect, Commander Ironforge, High Commander Vex, replied, the human is no longer an outsider. Moonwhisper has accepted him as clan-worthy. The sword has never been wrong. A younger clan leader named Captain Rex Windwalker stood up, but the sword was created for Zephyrians. How can we trust its judgment about an alien species? Perhaps it malfunctioned. Sacred weapons do not malfunction, said Elder Maya Starweaver, the oldest member of the council. Her silver markings were so faded they were almost invisible. I have studied the old laws for 90 years. The binding is legitimate according to our traditions. Jake watched the debate with growing concern. Dr. Santos whispered translations when the conversation moved too fast for Jake to follow. It was clear that the council was divided. Some members supported the ancient laws, while others believed those laws should not apply to humans. May I speak? Jake asked during a pause in the discussion. The council members turned to look at him. Several seemed surprised that he had dared to interrupt. High Commander Vex nodded. You may address the council, Commander Morrison. Jake stepped forward, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. Honored council members, I understand your concerns about my worthiness. I come from a different world with different customs. But I want you to know that I take this responsibility seriously. I would never dishonor Lady Arya or the Stormwind. Clan. Pretty words, said Captain Zane Shadowblade, who sat with his clan's delegation. But words are easily spoken. What proof do you offer of your honor? I offer my actions, Jake replied. I risk my life to protect Lady Arya without knowing about any marriage law. I seek no advantage from this betrothal. I only want to prove myself worthy of your trust. Elder Maya studied Jake carefully. Human, do you understand what it means to join a Zephyrian clan? You would be expected to follow our laws, protect our people, and place the clan's welfare above your own desires. I understand, Jake said. And I accept those responsibilities. Even if it means choosing between your loyalty to Earth and your loyalty to Valeria Prime? Asked Commander Vera. Jake hesitated. This was the question he had been dreading. I hope such a choice will never be necessary. But if it comes to that, I will honor my commitments to both worlds. The debate continued for hours. Jake learned that Zephyrian politics were complex, with old feuds and alliances affecting every decision. Some clans supported the betrothal because they wanted closer ties with humanity. Others opposed it because they feared human influence would corrupt their traditions. Finally, Elder Maya called for order. The council will vote on whether to recognize the sword's acceptance of the human. But first we must address Captain Shadowblade's challenge. Captain Zane stood up, his dark markings glowing with satisfaction. I maintain that no alien can truly understand our ways. The trial by blade will prove this. When the human falls, the betrothal will be void. And if he wins? Asked Lady Arya, speaking for the first time. He will not win, Zane replied confidently. But if by some miracle he defeats me, I will accept his worthiness. The council voted to allow the trial by combat to proceed. Jake was not surprised when the vote was close. 7 clans supported the trial, 5 opposed it. The stage was set for a confrontation that would determine the future of human-Zephyrian relations after the council session. Jake returned to his quarters to continue training with Lady Arya. She had been teaching him Zephyrian combat techniques, but progress was slow. Human and Zephyrian fighting styles were very different. You're still thinking like a human warrior, Arya said as they practiced with wooden swords. You attack with power and speed, but Zephyrian combat is about patience and precision. I'm trying, Jake said, wiping sweat from his forehead. But I only have one more day to learn what you've been studying your whole life. Then we must focus on what you do well, Arya said. Humans are adaptable. You can change your tactics quickly during battle. That might be your advantage against Captain Shadowblade. As they worked together, Jake found himself paying more attention to Arya than to the sword techniques. She moved with incredible grace, her silver markings glowing softly as she concentrated. He was beginning to understand why the sword had chosen him as her protector. Lady Arya, he said during a break. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. Do you really want to marry me, or are you just accepting this because of duty? She was quiet for a moment, then set down her practice sword. Commander Morrison, I was raised to put my clan's needs before my own feelings, but I will be honest with you. When I first met you, I saw you as just another human diplomat. Polite but unremarkable, Jake felt a stab of disappointment. And now? Now I see a man who was willing to risk everything to protect a stranger. A man who faces impossible odds without complaint. A man who treats me as an equal, not just a prize to be won. Her markings glowed brighter. I think I could learn to love such a man. Before Jake could respond, Lisa Chang burst into the training room. Commander, we have a problem. I've been monitoring communications from Earth, and there's been a development. What kind of development? Earth Command is putting pressure on the diplomatic corps to make sure you go through with this marriage. They see it as a way to secure a permanent alliance with the Zephyrians. But there are also groups on Earth who are protesting the idea of human-alien marriage. Jake felt a headache coming on. So now I'm fighting for more than just my life and Lady Arya's honor. I'm fighting for the future of 2 species. It gets worse, Lisa continued. Captain Shadowblade has been in contact with anti-human groups on other worlds. If he wins the trial, it will be seen as proof that humans are inferior. It could destroy our chances of forming alliances with other species. Lady Arya's expression darkened. Captain Shadowblade is using this trial for his own political purposes. He cares nothing for honor or tradition. He only wants to prove his beliefs about human inferiority. That evening, Jake sat in his room staring at the Moonwhisper sword. The blade continued to glow softly, as if it was trying to communicate with him. He had asked Dr. Santus about the sword's properties, but even the cultural expert didn't fully understand how the weapons worked. You chose me, Jake said to the sword. I hope you know what you're doing." The sword's glow seemed to pulse in response, and Jake felt a strange warmth in his chest. For a moment he could have sworn he felt Lady Arya's presence, as if the sword was connecting them somehow. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Lady Arya entered, looking worried. "Commander, I wanted to talk to you before tomorrow's trial. What's on your mind?" "I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about choosing between Earth and Valeria Prime. I want you to know that I would never ask you to abandon your people." Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the lights of Astral Heights twinkled like stars. "Lady Arya, I need to tell you something. I'm starting to care about you. Not just as a duty or because of the sword, but as a person. That makes tomorrow's fight even more important." "Why?" "Because I'm not just fighting for political alliances or ancient laws. I'm fighting for the chance to build something real with you, something that could bridge the gap between our worlds." Lady Arya moved to stand beside him at the window. "And if you lose, then I'll have failed everyone who believed in me. You, your father, my own people, but I don't intend to lose." "Captain Shadowblade is a skilled warrior," she warned. "He has never been defeated in formal combat." "Then I'll have to be the first to beat him," Jake said. "The sword chose me for a reason. Tomorrow I'll find out what that reason is." As the night deepened, Jake tried to sleep but found himself thinking about everything that had led to this moment. A simple diplomatic mission had become something much larger. He was no longer just Commander Jake Morrison of Earth's military. He was a bridge between two worlds, a symbol of what humans and Zephyrians could become together, the Moon Whisper. Sword glowed softly in the darkness, and Jake felt that strange connection again. Lady Arya was somewhere in the palace, probably lying awake as he was. The sword seemed to be telling him that they were linked now, bound by something deeper than law or custom. Tomorrow would bring the trial by combat. Jake would face Captain Zane Shadowblade in front of thousands of Zephyrians and representatives. The Grand Coliseum of Astral Heights was the largest building Jake had ever seen. The Crystal Arena could hold 50,000 spectators, and every seat was filled. Beings from dozens of worlds had come to watch the trial by combat between a human and a Zephyrian warrior. The morning sun shone through the transparent dome overhead, casting rainbow patterns across the sandy floor. Jake stood in the preparation chamber beneath the arena, trying to calm his nerves. The Moon Whisper's sword hung at his side, its silver glow visible even in the bright light. Lady Arya had given him traditional Zephyrian combat armor, lightweight plates that would protect him without slowing him down. "Remember what I taught you?" Lady Arya said as she checked his armor one last time. "Captain Shadowblade will try to end the fight quickly with powerful attacks. Don't let him control the pace of the battle. What if I'm not strong enough?" Jake asked quietly. Lady Arya placed her hand on his cheek, her silver markings glowing softly. "The sword chose you, Jake. Trust in that choice. Trust in yourself." Dr. Santos approached with a worried expression. "Commander, I've been studying Captain Shadowblade's previous fights. He's incredibly skilled, but he has one weakness. He becomes overconfident when he thinks he's winning. If you can survive his initial attacks, you might have a chance." Lisa Chang handed Jake a communication device. "Sir, Earth Command wants you to know that they're watching. The whole galaxy is watching. No pressure or anything." Jake managed a weak smile. "Thanks for the encouragement, Lisa." The sound of horns echoed through the chamber, signaling that it was time. Jake walked through the tunnel toward the arena floor, his heart pounding with each step. The roar of the crowd grew louder as he emerged into the sunlight. The arena floor was covered with fine sand that sparkled like diamonds. At the center stood a raised platform where the combat would take place. High Commander Vex Stormwind sat in the royal box with other clan leaders, their faces serious. Representatives from Earth and other worlds filled special sections, all watching intently. Captain Zane Shadowblade was already waiting on the platform. He wore black armor that matched his dark silver markings, and his sword gleamed with a cold light. Shadowfang was his clan's ancestral weapon, and Jake could see why it had that name. The blade looked like it could cut through anything. "Ladies and gentlemen," announced the arena herald, Today we witness a trial by blade between Captain Zane, Shadowblade of the Shadowblade clan, and Commander Jake Morrison of Earth. This combat will determine the worthiness of the human to join the Stormwind clan. Jake climbed onto the platform, drawing the Moonwhisper sword. The blade immediately began to glow brighter, responding to his presence. The crowd murmured in amazement. Even after 3 days, many had not believed the stories about a human wielding a clan sword. "Human," Captain Zane said, his voice carrying across the arena. "You should have stayed on your own world. Today you will learn the price of Zephyrian honor." "We'll see about that," Jake replied, settling into the fighting stance Lady Arya had taught him. The herald raised his hand. "Let the trial begin." "Captain." Zane attacked immediately, his sword moving faster than Jake's eyes could follow. Jake barely managed to block the first strike, the impact sending vibrations through his arms. Zane pressed his advantage with a series of rapid attacks that forced Jake backward across the platform. The crowd watched in tense silence as the two warriors fought. Zane's technique was perfect, each move flowing into the next with deadly precision. Jake struggled to keep up, relying more on instinct than skill to avoid the Shadowfang blade. "Is this the best humanity can offer?" Zane taunted as he drove Jake toward the edge of the platform. "You fight like a child with a stick?" Jake gritted his teeth and concentrated on Lady Arya's lessons. "Patience and precision," she had said. "Wait for the right moment." But every moment seemed wrong as Zane's blade came closer and closer to finding its mark. A particularly powerful strike from Zane knocked the Moonwhisper sword from Jake's hands. The weapon clattered across the platform, its glow dimming. The crowd gasped as Jake dove to avoid Zane's follow-up attack. "Yield, human," Zane commanded, pointing his sword at Jake's throat. "Accept your defeat with whatever dignity your species possesses." Jake looked up at the royal box where Lady Arya sat. Her silver markings were blazing with emotion, but she maintained her composure. She believed in him, even now. Jake rolled away from Zane's blade and scrambled toward his fallen sword. The moment Jake's fingers touched the Moonwhisper's handle, the weapon blazed with silver light. But this time was different. Jake felt a connection not just to the sword but to something deeper. He could sense Lady Arya's presence in his mind, her strength flowing into him. Jake stood up slowly, the glowing sword steady in his hands. "I'm not finished yet, Captain?" Zane's eyes narrowed. "Impossible. No one has ever recovered from losing their weapon in formal combat." "Maybe that's because no one has ever fought for the right reasons," Jake said. The second phase of the battle was completely different. Jake fought with new confidence, his movements flowing like water around Zane's attacks. The Moonwhisper sword seemed to anticipate his needs, guiding his hands to the right positions, but as the fight continued, Jake began to notice something strange about Captain Zane. The Zephyrian warrior was moving too fast, hitting too hard. His silver markings were glowing brighter than they should have been, and his eyes had an unnatural shine. During a brief pause in the combat, Jake studied his opponent more carefully. Zane's breathing was steady despite the intense fighting, and his muscles showed no signs of fatigue. "Something was wrong. You're enhanced," Jake said suddenly. "You've been using bio-modifications." The crowd erupted in shocked murmurs. Bio-enhancement was illegal in Zephyrian combat sports, considered a violation of natural honor. Zane's face twisted with anger at the accusation. "Lies!" Zane shouted. "You seek to avoid defeat with false accusations." But Jake had seen enough enhanced soldiers during his military service to recognize the signs. "Your reflexes are too fast, your strength too great. You're not fighting with natural ability." High Commander Vex Stormwind stood up in the royal box. "Captain Shadowblade, these are serious charges. Do you submit to examination by our medical officers?" Zane's response was to attack Jake with desperate fury. His enhanced speed made him incredibly dangerous, but Jake realized that the modifications had a weakness. Zane was fighting with artificial ability, not true skill. His movements were powerful but predictable. Jake began to use his human adaptability, changing his fighting style in the middle of combat. When Zane expected a defensive move, Jake attacked. When Zane prepared for an aggressive assault, Jake stepped aside and let the enhanced warrior's momentum carry him past. "Stand still and fight," Zane snarled, his perfect technique beginning. "To break down, I am fighting," Jake replied. "Just not the way you expected." The turning point came when Zane overextended himself on a powerful strike meant to end the fight. Jake sidestepped the attack and brought the Moon Whisper sword's pommel down on Zane's wrist. The enhanced warrior dropped his weapon with a cry of pain. Before Zane could recover, Jake placed the glowing tip of his sword at his opponent's throat. The arena fell silent. "Yield," Jake said quietly. Captain Zane looked around the arena at 50,000 faces watching him. His illegal enhancements were obvious now, his markings glowing with an artificial intensity that no natural Zephyrian could produce. His reputation was destroyed. "I yield," he said bitterly. The crowd exploded in cheers and shouts. Jake stepped back and lowered his sword, exhaustion finally hitting him. Lady Arya was already running down from the royal box, her face shining with joy and pride. "Jake," she called, using his first name for the first time. Before he could respond, she threw her arms around him. Her silver markings were blazing with happiness, and Jake felt that strange connection through the sword grow stronger. It was as if their minds were touching. High Commander Vex Stormwind approached the platform with several clan leaders. "Commander Morrison, you have proven your worthiness beyond any doubt. You fought with honor against a cheating opponent and showed mercy in victory. What happens to Captain Shadowblade?" Jake asked. "He will be stripped of his rank and exiled from Valeria Prime," the High Commander replied. "His use of illegal enhancements has dishonored his entire clan." Dr. Santos climbed onto the platform, beaming with excitement. "Commander, the implications of this victory are enormous. You've not only proven human worthiness, but you've exposed corruption in Zephyrian society. This will change everything." As Jake looked around the arena at the cheering crowd, he realized that the trial had accomplished more than just validating his betrothal to Lady Arya. It had shown both species that they could overcome their differences and work together. Humans and Zephyrians had more in common than either side had realized. Lady Arya took his hand, and Jake felt the connection through the sword pulse stronger. "Are you ready for the next challenge?" she asked with a smile. "What challenge is that?" "Planning our wedding," she said. "It's going to be the most complicated diplomatic event in galactic history." Jake laughed, still holding the glowing Moon Whisper sword. "After fighting an enhanced warrior in front of 50,000 people, how hard can wedding planning be?" 3 weeks after the trial by combat, Jake stood in the palace gardens watching servants prepare for the most important wedding in galactic history. Representatives from 50 different worlds had arrived on Valeria Prime to witness the marriage between a human and a Zephyrian. The gardens had been transformed into something magical, with crystal arches and floating flowers that glowed in the evening light. "Nervous?" asked Dr. Santos, joining Jake beside the fountain where they had first met Lady Arya. "Terrified," Jake admitted. "Fighting Captain Shadowblade was easier than this. At least then I only had to worry about one sword pointed at me. Now I have to worry about disappointing entire civilizations." Lisa Chang approached carrying a datapad filled with messages from Earth. "Commander, or should I say Prince Consort Jake, you've got congratulations from the President, 3 senators, and about 1 million Earth citizens. Oh, and my mother wants to know if Lady Arya has any single sisters." Jake laughed despite his nerves. "Tell your mother I'll ask at the reception." The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of activity. After Jake's victory in the arena, the Council of Clans had voted unanimously to accept him into the Stormwind clan, but that was just the beginning. Diplomats from across the galaxy had descended on Valeria Prime to negotiate trade agreements and alliance treaties. The marriage between Jake and Lady Arya had become a symbol of cooperation between species. "Jake," came a familiar voice behind him. He turned to see Lady Arya approaching through the garden paths. She wore a simple white dress that made her silver. Markings seemed to glow from within. Even after 3 weeks of seeing her every day, she still took his breath away. "You look beautiful," he said, taking her hands in his. You look scared, she replied with a smile. Having second thoughts about marrying an alien princess? Never, Jake said firmly. I'm just worried about messing up the ceremony. There are so many traditions to remember. Lady Arya's markings brightened with amusement. Jake, you defeated our greatest warrior in single combat. You can handle a wedding ceremony. As they walked through the gardens together, Jake marveled at how much his life had changed. A month ago, he had been a simple military officer. Now he was about to become a prince of an alien world and a symbol of unity between species. Lady Arya, he said, I need to ask you something important. What is it? After we're married, what happens next? I mean, I know I'll be part of your clan, but what about my duties to Earth? What about the future? Lady Arya stopped walking and turned to face him. Jake, I've been thinking about that too. I believe we can create something new. Not just a marriage between two people, but a bridge between two worlds. We can show the galaxy that different species can work together. How? I've been talking with my father and your Dr. Santos about establishing a joint embassy. Half human, half Zephyrian. A place where both our peoples can learn from each other. Jake felt excitement growing in his chest. That's brilliant. But where would we build it? Actually, Lady Arya said with a mysterious smile, we've already started construction. Come with me? She led him to a section of the palace he had never seen before. Through a crystal doorway, Jake could see a vast construction site where human and Zephyrian workers labored together. They were building a ship unlike anything Jake had ever seen, combining human technology with Zephyrian crystal. Engineering, what is it? Jake asked in amazement. Our new home, Lady Arya replied. A starship that can travel between Earth and Valeria Prime. We'll spend 6 months on each world every year, learning both cultures and helping to build stronger bonds between our peoples. High Commander Vex Stormwind approached from the construction site, his formal robes replaced by work clothes. Commander Morrison, what do you think of your wedding gift? Sir, this is incredible, but I can't accept something so valuable. You're not accepting it? The High Commander said with a grin. You're earning it. This ship will be your responsibility. You and Lady Arya will be our first interstellar ambassadors. That evening, the wedding ceremony began as the twin moons of Valeria Prime rose over astral heights. The Crystal Cathedral had been decorated with flowers from both Earth and Valeria Prime, creating a garden of impossible beauty. Representatives from dozens of worlds filled the seats, making it the largest diplomatic gathering in galactic history. Jake stood at the altar wearing a uniform that combined human military dress with Zephyrian ceremonial robes, the Moon Whisper. Sword hung at his side, its glow reflecting off the crystal walls. Lady Arya approached down the aisle wearing the traditional white dress of a Zephyrian bride. But with earth flowers woven into her hair, the ceremony itself was a blend of human and Zephyrian traditions. Elder Maya Starweaver performed the Zephyrian rituals while a human chaplain from Earth handled the human elements. Jake and Lady Arya exchanged vows in both languages, promising to honor each other and both their worlds. Do you, Jake Morrison, of Earth, accept Arya Stormwind of Valeria Prime as your wife and clan sister? Elder Maya asked. I do, Jake replied, his voice carrying clearly through the cathedral. Do you, Arya Stormwind of Valeria Prime, accept Jake Morrison of Earth as your husband and clan brother? I do, Lady Arya said, her silver markings blazing with joy. Then by the power vested in me by the ancient laws of Valeria Prime and the contemporary laws of Earth, I pronounce you husband and wife, joined in marriage before the stars themselves. As Jake and Lady Arya kissed, something amazing happened. The Moon Whisper sword at Jake's side began to glow brighter than anyone had ever seen. The light spread through the cathedral, touching every person present. For a moment, Jake felt connected. Not just to Lady Arya, but to everyone in the room. Human and Zephyrian minds touched briefly, sharing emotions and understanding. Dr. Santos later called it the most significant telepathic event in recorded history. But for Jake, it was simply the moment he knew that he and Lady Arya were meant to build something greater than either of them could achieve alone. The reception was held in the palace's great hall, with food from dozens of worlds and music that blended human and Zephyrian styles. Jake found himself talking with diplomats, scientists, and ordinary citizens from across the galaxy, all eager to learn about the marriage that was changing interstellar relations. "Prince Consort Jake," said Ambassador Chun from Earth, the president, "wants you to know that Earth is very proud of what you've accomplished here." "Thank you, Ambassador. But I hope people understand that this is just the beginning. Lady Arya and I want to do more than just represent our species. We want to help build a future where all species can work together." As the evening continued, Jake noticed that the celebration had become more than just a wedding reception. Humans and Zephyrians were mixing freely, sharing stories, and making friendships. Other alien species were joining the conversations, creating connections that would last for years. Lady Arya found him near midnight, looking tired but happy. "How do you feel, my husband?" "Like the luckiest man in the galaxy," Jake replied. "A month ago, I was just a soldier following orders. Now I'm married to the most amazing woman I've ever met, and we're about to embark on the adventure of a lifetime." "Speaking of adventures," Lady Arya said, "there's something I need to tell you about our new starship." "What about it?" "While we were getting married, our engineering teams made a discovery. The ship's crystal matrix is responding to the Moonwhisper sword. They think the connection between us might allow the ship to travel faster than any vessel in the galaxy." Jake stared at his wife in amazement. "Are you saying we might have accidentally created a new form of space travel?" "It looks that way. The sword's connection to both of us seems to enhance the ship's capabilities. We could travel between Earth and Valeria Prime in days instead of weeks." 6 months later, Jake and Lady Arya stood on the bridge of their ship, the Unity, as it approached Earth. Through the viewports, they could see the blue and green world that had been Jake's home. But now he understood that home was not a place. It was wherever he and Lady Arya were together. "Are you ready to show my people their new daughter-in-law?" Jake asked. "Are you ready to show your people their new son-in-law?" Lady Arya replied their ship carried more than just 2 newlyweds. The cargo holds were filled with Zephyrian technology and culture. Gifts for Earth? They also carried the first group of Zephyrian students who would study at human universities, while human students traveled in the opposite direction. The Unity had become more than just a ship. It was a symbol of what was possible when different species worked together. Its revolutionary propulsion system, powered by the connection between Jake, Lady Arya, and the Moonwhisper sword, had already inspired new research into telepathic navigation. As they entered Earth's orbit, Jake felt a presence in his mind. Lady Arya was sharing her thoughts with him through their bond with the sword. She was nervous about meeting his people, but excited about the possibilities ahead. "Don't worry," Jake said aloud, though she could feel his emotions through their connection. "Earth is going to love you almost as much as I do." "Almost? Well, I did fight a duel for you. That has to count for something extra." Lady Arya laughed, her silver markings brightening with amusement. "You humans and your competitive nature. Very well, you love me most. But only by a small margin.